Power taken, not given, as always. And with my dear friend Melanie, all the way from down under. How you doing, Melanie?
I'm good. How you going? Hi,
Fantastic.
yeah. You'll hear the down under come through every once in a while.
You know, I was going to mention that when we were backstage, that when I hear your voice now, I do hear like the hint of it. It's like someone sprinkled some Australian accent on there. You know, like I imagine this is inevitable. It's living in the area. How long you been there?
8 years now, I think.
Yeah.
It comes through more sometimes than others. It's specific slang or words will really bring it out. But yeah, I think Americans think that I sound Australian now, and Australians think I sound American. So the worst of both worlds.
It is. It really is. It's like an example of this is it's a terrible person, but it's the first one I think of when I think of this. Have you ever heard of Andrew Tate by any chance?
Unfortunately.
Okay, all right, the misfortune. But he's a weird fucking accent, right? Like when you hear him talk, you're like, what? Where the hell is this guy from? And then I found out he was born, I think, in Indiana or something, or somewhere in the Midwest. But he left for Europe, for Britain, when he was like 4 or something. So his accent is all fucked up. So that's why he's so you know. To the Aussies, you're never gonna sound like one of them, I imagine. No. And to us, it's just like, what's she doing here? What's going on? What's she trying to pull over on?
Something on. Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine, and she went to Outback Steakhouse, which I'm sure you know, but folks, not an Australian restaurant. It was started in like Boston or something. I remember it was just like some Americans came up with this and thought it was a cool gimmick, and I was very disappointed to find out that it wasn't Australian. But anyway, she went to an Outback Steakhouse, and the waiter they had did this really like bad fake Australian accent. Like he came up and he started talking to them. They're like, wait a minute, is this real? Because it sounds awful. And they was like, okay. But then as the night went on and it got more stressful, the accent just kept getting worse and worse. And I was
it's
like, man,
a hard accent to intentionally put on. It is actually, it's very difficult. And Australian actors are quite good at putting on American accents. It's funny. A friend of mine who's an actor, because I work in film, just got a gig doing a commercial for Outback Steakhouse because he lives in LA now. Oh. And he's like, as soon as I had to try to pronounce it, I started phrasing. But it's a very hard accent to do. If you're American, you should try it sometime. It does not go well.
I remember you telling me one time that someone heard you say bananas in pajamas and it freaked them out. Oh, can you tell that story? I remember you telling that. It was so funny.
Well, it just, I think they had used to dub it, and these kids, so I said, yeah, bananas in pajamas. And they're like, what? I'm like, there's the kids show Bananas in Pajamas. And they're like, you mean bananas in pajamas? And I just said, what? Yep. And of course, there's a magpie. Like it's Australian. It makes sense. It was basically like the proto Bluey, but it had just never really occurred to me.
Yeah. That is funny. It's funny thinking of kids saying bananas in pajamas. It's just very funny to me. I think of little children saying that. Like that really throw me off.
And you can hear it though. As soon as you try to do the Aussie accent, it comes out as like a weird posh British.
Yeah. You know what?
That's how it does.
So does a Southern accent. Like a Southern accent, like if you speak
I
it,
lived down south for a while, so I can do the drawl.
Yeah, I began to notice that a Southern accent sounds suspiciously, or not suspiciously, but I mean it sounds very similar to like a British one. I can see
like lazy. It's just like slow.
Yeah, it's like a slowed down British accent. With like, I mean, I guess you could say that for all American English accents, as they descended from British accents. But I can see the correlation really strong in the Southern accent, and so the Australian one, I can hear that too. It's interesting. Another strange one is South African. That's the South African English accent is a bizarre
like
one.
Kiwi, New Jersey, South African, like they're all in this little weird Venn diagram.
Yeah. The New Zealand one. For some reason, the New Zealand one and the South African one sound more similar to me.
Very similar.
Than the Australian, and which you would figure would.
It is 100% true.
Yeah. And one last thing, well, two last things about Australia is I remember being really annoyed. I watched ESPN when I was a kid, and it would always say Foster's Australian for beer, and I'd be like, all right, Australian is not a language. It's just weird. I guess, like, I mean, that's it's just an odd thing to say. And Vegemite. I remember a guy we went to school with, Mike Sturwald, we called him Stu. He went to Australia years ago, and I remember him saying, "Hey, TJ, I had some Vegemite." It was awful. I remember saying that it was terrible. So what's your I mean, have you tried it? I guess I should ask.
Okay, so Vegemite tastes approximately like earwax. And I have to say, unfortunately, literally within the last 6 months, I have finally found a use for it, like a taste for it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very earthy. You have to use it very sparingly with a lot of butter and like cheese and avocado and things. And it's, yeah, for a long time I thought it was disgusting, and now I've realized I've acclimatized, and it's really good. It's just like a little bit in a soup. Like if you're making like a potato and leek soup, it's got this incredible, like strong, yeasty, earthy, earwaxy type of tone to it. You know, don't let anyone tell you Australians don't have culture.
Okay. So essentially, as long as Vegemite's not the star of the show, you can kind of bear it. It
Yeah,
sounds like.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's good. All right, I can dig it. Well, all right. So on